Sorry about that. Hey everybody, I'm back with a another AlphaGo master game. I think this one is really interesting, and we'll see why. AlphaGo is playing white, and we already see something quite interesting. AlphaGo chooses this. I'm sorry for the markings. I actually was recording earlier, but got interrupted and lost all my footage. But we see AlphaGo playing this Chinese opening, which is really interesting because typically, let's say black had played here, right, or the small knight, but let's say here. This is not really very good here because if white tries to expand, I'll say something simple. The Moya around the bottom left, which is the idea behind the Chinese opening typically, then it's very easy for black to come in, just say here. If white attacks, then black can make an easy sabaki, or say here. But if black comes in like this, it's not so hard for black to reduce white and basically break up the left side. And so that Moya is like very easy to cut in half. There's lots of ways to come in here, by the way. There's you can play this one. This one's very simple. Here and then here. Oh, attacking the D10 stone. Very easy. Here. Oh, you don't like the defense? Then attach. It's not going to work out well because black gets stronger. Pincer. Right? Pincer. Well, take the corner, right? This is reverse to a Joseki that we all know. This is really good for black. Hane, crosscut. This is also a different Joseki. And black is decently maybe this one in this case, but black is decently happy to make a living group inside of white space, and later the stone can be isolated. So typically this opening not considered very good for white, but black played high. How does that change the position, assuming AlphaGo's move is, theoretically sound, pretty good? Well, black played here, but what would happen if black played over here, right? Or let's just make it simpler. Black plays the approach and backs off. Well, at first it looks like black's building a lot. This direction would actually be not so great because now black's Moyo is really good and white's Moyo needs another move to at least compete, but black has the first move, so black gets a key point or can invade first, etc., etc. So we'd want to reduce the top potential. Let's just say something very simple like a split. The approach is probably also possible, but the pincer variations are quite difficult. So I'd rather just split in this case. And here's the reason. It's if we play this kind of shape, very simple. Yes, black has a very nice big upper left framework. But let's evaluate the board for a second. Black has this enclosure, which is basically the same as this, like a very small difference. Actually, it's a little bit worse because this is wide, so it's easier to invade and reduce. So if we think of these as the same, how do we judge the rest of the board? Well, there's this extension. That's not very big, right? That's like an extra 4 points. Does reinforce C10, but doesn't change the development that much in terms of, or change, white's invasion too much. Obviously, if it wasn't there, white could extend, but that's not very different. This area up here, well, it's also decently big, nice extension, but it's not actually that much bigger than this one here. Yeah, the bottom left is a better comparison here, but the reason I'm noticing this one here is because this directly is affected with J17. You have the press follow-up here and potential invasions, but primarily the press. And how do we judge this corner and this corner? Well, white has very nice development here. This side is contestable for both, but better for white to develop because black has these weaknesses which hamper development because white can aim at them later. So overall, I kind of think black's extra little gains on the top here and on the left here don't really outweigh the development potential by white, and the extra gains are kind of offset because it's a little too wide. Like, the fact that this is only 3 space is kind of an advantage. It's more solid. So it's interesting to think about this little change. And the reason I'm bringing this up is if black doesn't play on the left, like in the variation I just showed, which is what happens in the game, then white has an opportunity to approach at c13, which will make this development, this framework development strategy, which is what the Chinese is typically centered around, basically work, right? That's what the Chinese opening wants. It wants to develop a Moya around this 3-4 point. If you're wondering why that is, it's because this corner, this 3-4 corner, has less weaknesses than a 4-4 because of the obvious 3-3 invasion and how much easier it is to get under this stone compared to this one. And so making a Moya around that is much more solid compared to making a Moya around the bottom right. That's basically that reasoning, in case you're not familiar with the Chinese opening. So black approached the bottom right, and these days, before AlphaGo, or old AlphaGo, we would see this one, and then white would maybe approach here, right? Like in the most direct line, the most clear, less, refined line, but very simple and clear. But AlphaGo is very fast. AlphaGo plays elsewhere, doesn't build to the bottom left, and there's a reason. If black still plays here, right? White would double approach, but in terms of development, it's blocking this direction right from the top. We still have the same kind of relationships we had before, right? Obviously, black doesn't have to play this now, but the relationships are basically the same because this move, you could settle here, right? But then it opens up the invasion, so not necessarily great. Also, this one is equally possible because this follow-up. This is still a bit wide, so we could attach and do other things. Not the point. The point is, we're playing in this top direction to minimize the influence of this stone. If black pincers, and then we can deal with it by playing, right, let's say this one. Well, okay, very first thing is this pincer. In this case, white might take the corner or just jump. To be honest, jumping is not bad because if we follow this Joseki, black's very low and d15 is inefficient, so yay, good for us. If black kicks, which is probably what black wants, blocking is Joseki, but probably not good for us because our solid group is not too useful and black can play elsewhere. Like, this is nice, but not too great considering how many stones we spent for the influence in the territory we're giving in the corner. That being said, there is still an invasion here that you can use to live if you so desire. But still not great. So at this point, we might just Tenuki. Yeah, maybe probe once, and then Tenuki. There's no reason we can't. And these are fairly small considering we still have the potential to live in the corner. And this Shimari looks very silly now because we'll have to spend an extra move to make it strong, which we could have done at the beginning in 2 moves. And we notice this middle center area is getting very, very large. So that's the low pincer. The other thing is, if we take the corner, I wouldn't recommend it in this case because black can make a very strong shape here. But this invasion is very hard to deal with, as a general rule of thumb, because it's 3 spaces from both sides, and even if it's somehow surrounded on all sides on the outside, it's very easy to make a living shape in here. This is basically alive already. If you really want, you could make these forcing moves, but that makes black stronger, so you could really just Tenuki, even just live. But I'm pretty sure you could probably live with Tenuki, to be honest. That being said, you could run out. This is also possible, right? Moving out with your shape. This is better shape because here this is the thing. But yeah, jumping is fine. If you play the 2 space one, there's a lot of potential variations. You could counter pincer here, probably just jump, and then I'm thinking maybe just Tenuki, to be honest. Little weird, but those are things you can do. But even if we play Joseki, right, like this, whoops, this 1 center L16 is kind of hard to use, to be honest. Like, this develops a very small space, which is, I mean, it's not small, it's quite big, but it's not huge, and white will get something to come back here. And if we play something over here, then this can still be, like, white can still come in over here and make a decent fight out of it. So I don't think it's necessarily great if black pincers, and black seems to agree. The other thing is that if you pincer, more likely there's the double approach, and after this is all done, white doesn't have to block on this side, white can block on this side, and build something on the right. Obviously, I'm skipping moves. Like, for instance, let's say we play this. This is not really played much. Actually, I don't like this at all. Let's just take the corner. We could play something like this, which was popular for a while. Right. And then we notice that, well, this is a big point, but this is also a decently large point to build a framework. So, yeah. And at this point, if black, defends this, well, first of all, there's still this attachment, which we see a lot in AlphaGo's game. So let's say, I don't know, here. It's hard to, there's not really a good move. This is still possible. So I guess this is still best. Then white can come over here, and we're still developing our nice framework in the bottom left. So that's quite nice. Yeah, so that's why that's basically why I'm thinking don't pincer, and why I'm thinking Fan Tingyu didn't pincer. Fan just backed off, and white, reinforces the stone, and black lives in the corner. This is really big because, again, we play here now. We play this variation and approach here. Approaching with the backup of our stones. Of course, there's some bad logic here, but it's fairly minimal, so pretty good. White attaches. This is really nice. I haven't seen this ordering before, but this is really nice because this guarantees that when you attach. So typically, what you do here is you play these moves, and then you play here, aiming at the peep. That's more normal, but these might not be good exchanges. This head being out ahead, the head of the stones being ahead of white, means that black has more control over this center area, which will affect the Moya potential that white is going for. And this shape has a weak point, a very clear weak point at the peep that is very difficult to deal with later on. Because if you connect, then this one aims at K17, and you have this kind of stuff where if you do this, you have this and then double hunt it to make life. Right, very easy life. I guess, here, black might not even connect. Black might Atari first and push up. This is very big. But even this is fine. You can make life inside, and white's thickness is not very useful because, again, your head is out ahead. So you'd have to make some exchanges. But this is a bit more refined. It means that, like, if black doesn't play anything, right? I don't think black does, yeah. Then this turn is very hard. You can't answer it here, right? You'd have to answer it like this. Or it's very hard to answer because even this you still have this peep, which is really annoying. So maybe you answer it like, I don't know. Like let's say you don't want to do this, right? You don't want to get surrounded, but it's very hard to answer. Like, you don't want to do this because white shape is much better. Now there's no weakness here, and you made a really stupid looking empty triangle. So, yeah, way harder to threaten, so maybe black plays here, but we get into a shape that's like similar to some of the modern openings where these are kind of forcing moves, which is a local loss, it's true, but these are very nice for your framework development, and white would be very, very happy to do that. Black plays this, which is a very nice move. I wouldn't have found it, but it's very nice. Basically, black is saying, hey, you're building the Moya here, don't build a Moya here, and getting on the outside. White answers. And black says, okay, now you're playing low, which means that black always has the push, and then these push. Let me just play the moves. Black always can push here and cut, or push here and later push here to limit the bottom. So black just comes in. It's already limited, but black wants to further reduce it because now that this is very strong, if black gets strong here, let's follow the game, I guess. Right. So if black, let's say white plays something defensive, and, well, really defensive, but a little less defensive, like just get strong here, then black can separate these and attack them together. So that's what black's kind of aiming for, while this also being a very, very big point in reducing the bottom left. I also am understanding what black's plan is now is to pull back here, and when white comes back here, or push and turn. Because now, even though this is a quite big loss, black has no shape problem, so black could tenuki, or connect first, and then attack this whole thing together, and work with e4 a little bit. Anyway, so black plays this joseki, and we see a little bit of a deviation. Normally we see this from white, and then we see this as a joseki, or this one also. But the problem here is that later, first of all, this side over here is undercut, so this is, you don't want to play a move like this, fairly small, especially if black's already alive. And this side has a very clear weakness aiming at the attachment and attacking these on a large scale, right? If black goes here, I mean, here you could even just push. Like, this is a good enough gain for black, right? So white plays a little bit more forcefully to get this connection in sente, and then black comes back and decides to reduce this anyway, starting from here. But basically black was saying, hey, you connect here. White doesn't want to do this because black can still cut. And this is a very nice, little bit over-concentrated because white still technically should defend. But here white gets really reduced, but it's okay because white's saying, hey, my shape is actually, if I don't have to save these stones and I treat them as light, relatively light, then I can either win this ko, get into your space here, or get something elsewhere, which would be better than just playing a defensive move. White makes a peep. Really interesting ko threat. It's hard to get into the details of it. I've seen this actually in a book before, by Go Say Again, but it's a little bit complicated. The main idea is that later, if I need to make sabaki, then this shape is readily available. That's the first thing that comes to mind. You're basically, the downside is A, you don't get to peep on this side, which is okay. The other big downside is you don't have the 3. The 3-3 is much harder to take. But typically, if you already have a position here, you're saying, I really want this top position, I'm not going to be giving you a bunch of influence for it. So white calculates that this exchange is generally better, I guess. Again, not very common. I've seen it, I've read about it, but yeah, not very common. Black backs out the ko, white defends. Again, moving towards this space, very nice. And black connects up. White peeps, black pushes and cuts for sente. But white says, hey, I don't really need to take this stone, and moves back to attack the bottom group. All a very nice calculated flow. Actually, I'm a little bit curious why this cut was necessary, but well, I guess it is necessary. Oh, that's cute. But it's the same idea as before. It's just like if we defend, there's a peep here, and then this is like threatening a million things. If here, then this becomes sente, and then push again. Like, this is a huge stick with hardly any eye shape, so yeah, a little bit better because we have the hane here now if white tenukis. And well, I don't know, it's not really that much better shape. I don't know. So black attaches, very normal, and white defends the top, which basically puts pressure on this group, right? It minimizes the effect of a push at f16. This game is really tricky, to be honest. Black kicks. This is, again, a shape point. You notice that if this wasn't here, we could play the 3/3 point and the peep here to make a combination to live, but without that, this is basically territory. And white defends the bottom. This is actually a really important move, because now moves around here, and we'll see that eventually, affect our sente. And so it's easier for white to reduce the right side, which offsets the strength that black just got here. At the same time, white makes points, which is obviously nice, and makes this overall formation a bit stronger, which means that this can be under attack later. So it's a very, very nice point. The only other point you could really consider is Hane, but if black settles, you might not build the influence in a direction that would be useful. So white defends, black invades. White attaches. This is all pretty normal, and white plays this shape, which is the most efficient way to make a living shape directly, given the starting situation. You have this tiger's mouth and a jump, and this. This is like super efficient. These stones are not important, so we don't need to add another move to connect them, even though it's decently big. Now, if we look at this board, this is kind of interesting. Who has control of the center? Is it white or black? It's a little hard to say, but actually black has a bit better control because there's a cut here, which means that this area is very hard for white to get into. This area over here is a bit more under, I should use a different thing. It's a bit more under white's control, but again, these are like one space from each other, so basically whoever gets the next move controls that. The largest area of the board, wow, I'm using a lot of symbols, is clearly on the right. How should we go about reducing? We don't want to just play a passive move like this, because we'll get pushed into the wall and under attack. AlphaGo decides to play here. Now, we've already seen AlphaGo play attachments here, right? The problem with this is basically if we just live as black, like just live, then we don't have a good method here. And if we connect up over, this is still too big. Like the corner is not big enough because again, I guess I should connect. Because again, this area is hard for white to control. White needs another move here, and this is getting really, really large. If white plays something like this, we can push, Atari, Atari. Yeah, this is forcing, but white's group is under pressure. And white could try something a little lighter, but still this. And so maybe white just ignore it. Well, white can't really ignore it without giving up the two symbol. White ignores it. This Atari is really painful. Like, it's still under attack, and now this top is under pressure. So this area over here is actually really, really hard. So white doesn't want to just let black cut under, so white plays a second line move. Basically saying, hey, I'm going to settle here, aim at your cut, right? Because there are a lot of moves that aim at this cut. Like, even the most normal move, right? This one, that also aims at this cut. If black jumps, then you can wedge and cut. There's no way for black to connect up. So, although I guess in this shape, there's this move, but this doesn't quite work necessarily. Because you still can do this kind of squeeze thing. Maybe just here. Yeah, this is fine. Although you lose a lot, the corners, like you obviously wouldn't do this right now because black's getting really, really strong on the outside, but you can aim at this cut. But the main thing is, hey, this one, I don't want to allow black to take the side. I want to give black the center because that area is still under contest. Like, I have more control over this area than I do over this area. So let's take the side part, push black up towards the area I can control a bit better. Black defends, And white pushes up. And if we look at this in Tewari, it looks like white came here and black played this exchange, which is not really a good exchange because there's still the cut. Black pincers, preserving points. At this point, black really doesn't have any points except for the upper right, so black has to do this. And then black makes life here, kind of, making a ko shape. This is still ko. And then white has to basically move to the next area. So now the center is basically the only place left to play. But it's not clear how to develop it because there's this cutting potential and this forcing move push and this hane. But white says black is already very, very strong here. So let's attach to it to make it stronger and gain a little bit in the center. Now, it's true this relationship can be cut, but it doesn't change the fact that white is ahead of black in the center, which means that at worst, we can do something like this, right? And still maintain the area, control of the area, even if we don't keep connected to our stones. Now, of course, you know, black could take this, but there's always the potential to run out. And here, like, we can fight, and then there's always the worry white comes back here and gets a really big gain, which is enough to offset the loss in the center. So white's ahead, white turns. This is basically a good flow. After this, white has to defend that. And white comes back, or black comes back to cut. We both fix our shape. Black is running out, and white just, you know, pretty gently surrounds this stone. Black is aiming at like this attachment, or I think something a bit bigger, but the problem is that white's actually, generally speaking, alive on both sides. Even if black gets this, we can always take here, which threatens that, and our group's alive here, I think. Yeah, seems like we are alive. So, I just wanted to read something quickly. And this is independently alive, and if white gets this, still much bigger than this upper right. So black has to try to do something here. And white basically just lets black connect on dame, killing off these almost, like you can take him, you can still save them in ko, but it's really hard. And white's just going to develop this area. Also, there is still the cut at R10. Of course, white has some weaknesses too, so they're kind of mei. Black probes. This is a very nice shape move. Basically, whichever way white goes, black's going to be able to cut, or aim at a cut. Shorting the liberties. But white doesn't care too much. Like again, white's always just trying to keep a balance between the different areas. So white reinforces the center, aiming at attacking this bottom group as a whole. Black reinforces the shape. This is just an exchange. White basically cuts because if black goes here, then white can decide how best to handle this fighting. Probably just jump, to be honest. Unless I'm like really tired and missing something, I think this is just the best way. And then you have to connect, and white defends. Can force once if you want to be safe. At this point, this cut doesn't really matter. White would just give it up to kill the center. So white cuts basically because white wants to use the little bit of strength that he got here and basically by forcing this group to run and live, white's going to get more strength here to solidify this group and basically allow white to push up here and kill the bottom left, I think is the plan. But black comes up, tries to live, then white reinforces, so now this group has to get out. Black plays a nice Tesuji. This is just a really nice move. Nose Tesuji. White reinforces, now black has to live here, very painfully. Like, basically just 2 eyes, and white gets very strong on the outside on both sides, and lots of points. And white comes back here. Black wants to make the group strong. But at this point, we kind of basically just see like black in all this fighting made two groups that have totaled less than 10 points, and white has consolidated the left side and the bottom and accomplished the original goal, which was to limit the influence over here in the center. Right? We see a squeeze, which is pretty nice. We see white making shape and connecting, and then finally coming back because white has enough points to win the game. And the goal was basically, how do we handle this cut, the influence and control over the center that black has between the cut and the head out here. And we do that by basically attacking the bottom left while simultaneously building and attacking the center. Or building the center first, black had to come in, so then it kind of became a wash, but by attacking, white profited on both sides and still accomplished the goal of reducing this area. We see a little bit of endgame, but it's not really important. Both sides basically just consolidate the spaces. And at this point, white is decently ahead, probably like almost really rough count, like quickly, I'd say like 7 points ahead. I'm not really sure, but that would be my guess. Like pretty big for a match like this. Maybe not as that, maybe like 5, but it's still pretty big. So really interesting game, like very technical, lots of really tricky positions. Like this game to me I almost didn't want to review it, but I also thought this game was really interesting, just because there's so many unfinished, unusual shapes, and the direction of play is constantly changing. Kind of. Then we have this the easiest thing for me in this game is, hey, at this point here, this unusual move, why did we play it and why does this make sense, is the easiest thing in the game for me to understand because it's the direction of play of the center. The earlier stuff, like, can you guarantee you're going to come back to do this first? Maybe. This shape is really interesting too, because I'm not sure really if it's a good or bad exchange. Like, I think it's good for black. I think it's a nice answer, but I'm not sure if it's really helpful in the end, because black comes in anyway. I think this is really nice, the awareness changed to this move compared to the more standard jump. This move was played by Dosaku actually in a couple games, but it is not played normally because it leaves more weak points. And then this kind of ko shape. Yeah, and then we come back and take initiative in the center and then reinforce our group to minimize the influence of the upper left. And we just see like really, really efficient stones everywhere. Basically everything is handled with the most minimal amount of stones. Also, this is just super nice direction of play to play here to mitigate the strength. And this is just good shape. But yeah, so a lot of little things, like a lot of really subtle little things, and we're doing it all with the most minimal amount of stones we can. This is like one of the most absolutely beautiful and efficient games, like, I think I've ever seen. I really, really like this game, even though this game is like really technical and difficult because of all the little things. I really, really thought this game was cool, so I wanted to share it and give my commentary. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you definitely learned something. I hope. I might not have made it super clear, but I hope you learned something. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.